Hi guys, Dr. Sam here with SJL Wellness, and today we're going to be talking about stress, anxiety, self-esteem, and confidence within our kids. Kiddos, children, teenagers, all of it. It's a pretty near and dear thing to my heart, and to see the difference in how life is maybe now compared to even whenever I grew up is much different. And I still myself even had struggles with self-esteem, confidence. Little did I know that that was anxiety at the time, and to see that manifest within adults and myself as an adult, it's pretty eye-opening. But then one of my biggest passions, if you are a client of mine and have been in my office, I am a huge proponent on mental health, on allowing people to know that they're not alone in this. And to actually now, what this webinar will be about is diving deep into what is anxiety, what is stress, how is that affecting anxiety, how is that affecting a child's self-esteem and confidence. So even though we're talking about this, and not even though, that's such a diminishing word, as we're talking about this for our kids, just know the impact it could have on them as young adults, as parents themselves one day. We want to help break this cycle for them if it has occurred within them, and we want them to get to the root cause of it, get to the reasoning behind it, so they can move past it and they can be better, live better lives, live more meaningful lives, and just live a life that they're comfortable within their own skin. So we're just going to be talking about the top 5 signs that you could see within your child. If they're, you might not, maybe that's common, maybe that's normal. Common and normal, just horrible words to use. But you're going to be able to look at your child maybe in a different light and say, like, gosh, something just hasn't been quite right and I don't know what it is. Maybe some of these signs that I'm going to be talking about is anxiety kind of coming out within your child and manifesting from within your child. And so the anxiety then is like, and we'll get into this, just kind of comes a trickling effect into self-esteem and confidence. So with the top 5 signs, but then I'm going to give you some top 5 tips on what to do and how to help and how to kind of nip it in the bud and to help your child just flourish versus just feeling like they're falling behind or just not being the child that they can be. So with that being said too, you might notice this be a little bit more, but I can't necessarily say that. They do say that it shows up more anxiety in girls, young girls, because that's just kind of how we're wired, and our hormones are way more sensitive to having that anxiety rear its ugly head versus boys. But I've seen it so much with boys too. So I don't necessarily like to say, hey, yeah, it's more of a female thing. No, I've seen it in both. And we just need to bring this to light once again, and we need to lift it up to the surface and peel back the layers and find out what's really going on. So we want to find out, we want to dive deep into why these kiddos might be having these struggles and what they're actually experiencing. And so I can tell you this, after studying this, and you know, as a chiropractor, we're pretty much neurological doctors. We understand the nervous system incredibly well. I can look back. I myself had a horrible, stressful situation happen a few years ago, and I'm a young adult in my mid-30s, okay? I didn't even realize how much my body had gotten into the fight or flight mode, and we'll get into this, the stress response, and it got locked on like you put the key in the padlock or the deadbolt and you turned it and you threw the key away. I was locked into that mode. Anxiety through the roof like I've never had before. And I was an adult. We are talking about children. I, as an adult, should have been able to know, should have been able to pay attention to the signs, the symptoms, how I was feeling, and meet those head on and take care of them or address them. I didn't know how to do it as an adult until I took the time to research it and to figure out why and to see how stress and anxiety link is so closely intertwined. We are talking about children that don't have near the thought process as an adult dealing with these same situations, and their brain isn't even fully developed yet. So here we are, adults are going through this, but then kids are too. If we can help the kids get past it, we can help them become adults that might not have to go through it. And with this being a webinar geared towards kids, I want to make this also very aware and very apparent. This is the same thing for adults. If you are an adult that has gone through an anxiety issue, a high stress situation that you just feel like it has spiraled out of control, tune into this as well. I know we're talking about kids and I want to help these kiddos, but once again, adults, we are just a couple generations older than them, and we all deal with some of the, we actually deal with more stresses than kids do, but we actually have the ability to adapt to them a little bit better versus our children. So on that note, bringing it back to the kids, but like I say, adults, don't be afraid to be like, that's me. You're talking about me. But today I want to be, bringing to the surface, like, this could be your kiddo, this is what's going on, and this is how we can affect. You might start to notice, just like with kids and anxiety, like before we dive deep into this, like social interactions just quite aren't there like they should be at their certain age. Missing opportunities because they kind of live within their own bubble. They don't want to get out. They don't want to make friends. They don't want to do any extracurricular activities. They just want to come home and not do a lot. So like kind of that social isolation and, missing social interactions and stuff like that's kind of a lot, a big flag saying, something's maybe not quite right. But with anxiety, it kind of becomes a rippling effect, and how it's so important to realize the signs in young kids is because if we notice them in like a young girl or a young boy at the age of 7 and things don't get addressed, it can ripple then into 17, and then whenever they're 27 or 37. And with girls, if there's things that are going on at a young age that aren't being paid attention to or getting figured out, we'll be talking about how the hormones are affected within stress and anxiety. That then with the hormones, think about whenever you're 27 years old, and ever since you're 7 years old, you've suffered with anxiety, and how these hormones are intertwined with that. No wonder women at that age, what are they wanting to do at that age? They're wanting to maybe try having kids, they want to start a family, and they're having fertility issues. Big flag, big red flag to pay attention to, and how some of this can be prevented for these kids. And then once again, when they're young adults, issues that can be possibly completely avoided later on for them. So it all comes down to kind of a person's ability to adapt to stress and adapting to stress better, and having way less of like all of those fluctuating problems and like the surge of hormones and like the ups and downs of everything, and just once again adapting better to stress. So let's go ahead and dive into the top 5 signs of anxiety and self-esteem and confidence issues within kids. The first one that we're going to deal with is sleeping habits or sleep issues. If a child with anxiety, and we've all, like, and anxiety is a part of life. It's just whenever it gets out of control or not able to adapt, like I have mentioned, and they're not able to process it. So once again, we've all had those moments of anxiety and in an anxious state. What's our mind doing? How are we feeling? We are tense. Our heart could be racing. Our mind is racing for sure. We feel go, go, go. We can't relax back down. We feel like we've maybe drank 15 cups of coffee. And how do you expect some kid that's feeling those ways to be able to sleep? Their body can't shut down, their mind can't shut down, they're unable to fall asleep, and then they're probably unable to stay asleep. Mornings then, therefore, are going to be tough. They're going to be hard because they're up forever in the middle of the night. I do hear of a lot of parents complaining like, oh, they're up playing till 3 a.m. on video games. We're going to talk about like calmness of within the mind. Like, they should want to be going to bed at a decent time, even if that's midnight for some teenagers. But to be up and awake and go, 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 that overactivation of the brain It's not going to serve any kiddo any purpose and any good, because it's just going to cause another stress and another like another little ball that you're throwing into the nervous system and into the body that is trying to juggle. Little kiddos, like with sleep issues, they're going to be the ones that might be experiencing higher levels of anxiety. They're going to be coming into mom and dad and they're unable to sleep, or they're coming into mom and dad's room in the middle of the night, you know, and have their worries or have their fears, or, you know, having constant nightmares, or I had a bad dream. Maybe they did, maybe they didn't, and that's just their way of getting your attention. They're going to be those kiddos that are coming in the middle of the night and waking mom and dad up. The night terrors, sleepwalking, that just once again shows that the mind is not stopping and resting. It's going, and it's going constantly. So that's just kind of like the subconscious mind bringing anxiety or stress to the surface with some of that stuff. And talking about, oh great, there's a dog barking. Sorry, girls. Let me take one break here. Sorry about that. When doing videos from home, I have my lovely children, four-legged ones here, that feel like they need to protect everything. So with those kids, and going back to like the sleep issues, if their little minds are constantly caught in the racing thoughts, the go, 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 they're locked into more of a stress mode or our sympathetic mode. Within our sympathetic mode, it's stress, it's fight or flight, it's constant thoughts racing, worry, it's stress, it's deadlines, it might be homework assignments, it might be, you know, bullying at school, fitting in at school. These kids want to lack social interaction, so going to school and trying to make friends and be friends and all that stuff isn't really happening and working out too well for them. So what's that just doing to their anxiety level? It's bringing it up. What's it doing to their stress level? It's putting another stress into their system. And so now each time, and with young kids, adults, we have a way better way of adapting to stress just because of going through things, experience, but kids have such a lower threshold to stress, and the number of stresses, like as adults, not smart, but we're able to juggle family, husband or wife, kids, work, deadlines, extracurricular activities for the kids, extra activities for us, and we're juggling maybe 7 to 10 balls at a time, and we can do it. And like maybe we're throwing one more that we aren't able to, and that's whenever like like some people have an anxiety attack, they have a panic attack, and their body, their stress response and their stress load completely burns up, and they just kind of, I mean, I've been there, I don't know if y'all have, but you just kind of almost lose it. Kids are maybe able to juggle 2 to 3 balls, and you keep throwing more of them, like of the instances that I just mentioned, like sports and fitting in and bullying and schoolwork and deadlines and family pressure and this and this. Their bodies have such a lower threshold that their stress response gets kicked on sooner, faster. We all have heard of those people that have shorter tempers, I being one of them, that our fuse just gets tripped shorter and quicker. So kids are just kind of like that across the board. We want to bring them into a rest mode, rest and digest and relaxation. And so that's the parasympathetic nervous system within our body. We want that to be kicked on with these kids so they're able to calm down, relax, rest, digest, grow, develop, heal. That entire parasympathetic system, that is what it does for us. So with sleeping, when are kids growing? When are they developing? When are they doing all this? Whenever their body's in rest and relaxation mode, okay? And they're sleeping. So that's just kind of how sleep will be one of the top signs, sleep issues. Another thing with stress is bringing in like what we call the 3 T's, thoughts, traumas, and toxins. Thoughts being emotional things going on with kids. Now, once again, there's social media. The only thing good about social media is sharing educational information like I am doing now. Other than that, I mean, and reaching out and seeing friends or keeping in touch with friends that you haven't, but the amount of social pressure within those, excuse my French. Those damn social media platforms, what it is doing to children's minds and anxieties and depressions, it should be outlawed. I'm sorry. There's my tangent, but like moving on. But anyway, with emotional stresses, they have the social media, they have bullying, they have fitting in, they have, you know, sports pressure, they have all of these things that emotionally that they're going through. So they have those stresses. They have physical stresses, which are normal. They're gonna go out on their bike and they're gonna biff it 15 times before they figure out how to do it correctly. They're gonna fall out of trees and tree houses. They're going to think that they're indestructible and go jumping across something and they miss it and they biff it. Those are the physical stresses and all the sports stresses. You know, it's like you have the soccer and gymnastics and football and all of that. That's another stress just put onto their body. And then lastly, the chemical stress, or like the toxins. So these kids who might, you know, and this is talking, like I say, nutrition. Kids majority have not the best diets. The sugary foods, the Cheetos, the Doritos, the Gatorade, the Pop-Tarts. None of those are things that the body naturally recognizes, and it just causes another chemical storm within the body, and it's not going to help those kids in any fashion. And then also with these kids, there might be with ones that have a lot of anxiety. This is shockingly proven that they are super picky eaters. They hate almost everything that you put on. It could be sweet potatoes with marshmallows on them, for the love of Pete, and they won't touch them. It's like you're super picky eaters. I'm going to be doing a webinar on super picky eaters here at one point. So that's what they have going on there too. So you intertwine all of those stresses together, and it's just kind of one of those things that their body's not able to adapt to. Anxiety levels get ramped up, stress levels get ramped up. Then they're not to where they think they're going to be. That's going to cause self-confidence and self-esteem issues. So you can see how this is a trickling effect. And with the stress mode, like the body just can't get out of that stress mode, that fight or flight, and they're just walking around and they're just like in that constant go, 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 and we need to bring that back down as fast as possible. The second thing I want to bring to light on kids with anxiety is roller coaster of emotions. And I know that puberty and hormones start factoring in here, like even in our younger kids, it's gonna affect not just the kids, not just the parents, the entire family. Whenever you have a kiddo that they have so much anxiety that they don't know how to necessarily process it, because once again their body's just kind of cooking on the inside and just boiling. So they're gonna have a lot of very emotional or be very sensitive, even more so than like the other kids that you might have. So even though they're raised in the same family, same environment, you just have one kid that might have just one of those little bit of a missing link that's going to cause them just to be very emotional. They also have fear issues. And with fear issues, you're not going to sit there and see your kid like constantly scared, but this will kind of manifest in motivational action. Their motivation to like get up in the day when you know they've had enough sleep. They want to lay around a lot. You'll even see this in having not even like a fear response, but just like a hesitation, even like whenever they might see like this aunt or uncle or cousins 3 times a year. They're familiar with them, they know who they are, but even then they like see that family member as like a fear-based, or like doesn't want to see them, or like it wants to avoid them. It's very interesting to some parents. It's like, whoa, what's happening with Susie or with little Jimmy over there? And like they don't want to talk to their cousin. Like it just becomes like that's another sign of anxiety kind of manifesting within them. With kids and like emotions, there becomes a time from about, oh gosh, it can even start as young as 10 on up to 18 and even beyond. And there's a gap between their emotional age and their physical age. And so you might have an 8-year-old in a physical body, obviously, that has the emotions of a 4-year-old. And like with your teenagers, their emotions will fly off the handle and think that like they know everything. Mom and dad, you don't know anything, and you're 14. No, kid, like, no. It's like, but you've heard it, like, you don't know anything, mom and dad, what do you know? Well, it's like, well, I'm actually your parent, and I actually know way more than you by experience. And it's like, there's just a gap between, and there's parts of the brain that we could go into, the amygdala and the prefrontal cortex and all of that, but there's a big gap in a way that a teenager, or even like a tween is able to shut down their emotions and like keeping their thoughts to themselves. Emotion and control is what I should say. That's not quite there. It gets there into young adulthood, hopefully. And once again though, that's just kind of letting the fight or flight mode. It doesn't allow for proper emotional processing. So we've all been stressed, and like, let's say something happens to us that normally we don't react to, but this time we're under a lot of stress and bam, we like want to rip somebody's head off. Like, we have all been there, but we might not get there as often because once again, we're better able to adapt as adults. But young kids, they still haven't figured that out yet. And it's just the maturation, the maturity of their brain. But if we don't get ahead of that and helping them calm that nervous system down, it becomes a person that's very quick to anger, very quick to anxiety, and then therefore depressions and a whole host of other issues. The third thing that I want to talk about is a tip that you'll see with kids: inflexibility and rigidness. They get aggravated easily and very defensive, even at the littlest things. Like, I've seen this with kids in the office, and the mom will say something and it's like, bam, like they're defensive immediately. That just shows to them, like with that defensiveness, it's like you back a dog into a corner and then something happens and then that dog lashes out. Same thing with kids. Whenever, and I feel so bad for them because they can't lie very well. Whenever that defense or aggravatedness comes out, that just shows that the level of stress and anxiety within their body is once again being manifested into defensiveness and aggression. They're unable to once again process. They'll also see with kids in the inflexibility and rigidness is performance pressure. These are like your type A's. You will see kiddos that have high anxiety are very performance driven. That could be with school and grades. That could be with sports. That even though they got a B, that's okay. A B is great. No one's ever asked me my grades from chiropractic school, but they will get into a slump. It'll beat on them, it'll wear on them if they didn't get that A. And once again, that pressure causes stress. That stress then causes anxiety, and it becomes this horrible circle that just keeps continuing and chasing. So be on the look for that too. And like giving encouragement to your children, like, yes, we want them to get good grades. You know, we don't want to praise bad grades, but letting them know that they're human, it's normal. Grades are grades, and like, we're proud of you, but like, just be aware of like those, you know, the highly performance perfectionisms. And like in sports and stuff, it's a hard time of year, not hard time of year, but hard age to be in, where sports is so pushed and like perfection is so pushed. We'll get into that, into like the tips. Parents, if your kid just wants to do summer swimming and doesn't want to compete, or competes like in the summer league, let them do it. I know I'm gonna probably bite my hand right now, but like, there's so many pressures with these kids, and sports is fantastic. It builds such great communication skills and team building, and like being a part, like I say, being a part of a team. But these kids sometimes just get so much pressure, and like their bodies can't handle it, and stress upon the body. Some of us that are adults, oh man, well, I've never had any accidents, I was never in any sports or anything like that, but the amount of stress does so much deterioration to your body than a lot of physical stress. So just kind of be aware of that. And with anxiety and like that perfectionism, that can then lead to, as you get anxiety and you want to focus on perfectionism and stress, that can then lead into like OCD issues. And that's a hard one to break. You talk to any psychologist or mental health therapist, breaking OCD is pretty tough, and it then kind of becomes ultra consuming for that person that then they're not able to focus on other things in their life that are just as important. And so nipping that early in the bud, I think, is pretty important. Another thing too with kids that have rigidity issues and inflexibility will be any change to their schedule throws them completely off. We all know that, like, yes, schedule and like bedtime and eating schedule and, you know, those things are all good. But if you have one kiddo that like one night we're going to do this instead of this, and they have a holy tantrum and stuff like that, that's just showing that like their controlness within themselves is now out of control, and that's manifesting as OCD and anxiety. So be on the lookout, just be kind of like little signs there. Number 4 is going to be other body system issues. So we've all had moments where we're highly anxious, highly stressed. And what's one of the things we all notice with ourselves? GI issues, stomach aches, diarrhea, constipation. Because once again, if your body is locked into fight or flight mode and it's worried about a threat, it is not focusing on digesting that burger from lunch. It is focusing on the threat, and all of the blood and all of the energy goes then to like our big leg muscles and arm muscles, heart and lungs to get us out of that threat. It ain't worrying about digestion. So like you're gonna get those kiddos with the tummy aches and like the GI issues. So if your kiddo's prone to being, you know, tummy aches, that's going to be showing signs of anxiousness. We've seen them when like our heart breaks for them whenever they call, you know, and like you get a call from school and it's like, yeah, he has a tummy ache again. And then he gets home and like he's okay. Okay, why the tummy ache? You know, they know that like the tummy ache will let them get home, but why are we having the tummy ache at school? There's something that's causing them some anxiety and it's building up into them, and that's just not a healthy way for them to process it. Immune issues is another bodily system that will get affected by a lot of stress and anxiety. With the immune system kind of being tight, well, not being, but kind of, with being tied in with the nervous system, these are the kiddos that are going to be sick a lot, like legit sick a lot. We've probably all been through, oh gosh, like a huge deadline for work, finals week, and we've all been like through those high stress times. And then once that stress is over, like with finals week, how many times do people get sick right after that? Because your body builds this stress, it kicks out all the hormones that it needs to kick out. Then once that stress has been released, bam, we don't have to worry about it anymore, and the immune system crashes and it doesn't keep you healthy as it should, and your immune system just kind of goes, heck with it, I am taking a break. We're going to be sick for a while, so you finally stop. So you finally rest, we're able to digest and kick our immunity back up. Another one is going to be our hormonal system, or the endocrine system. With stress, we've all heard of probably that lovely hormone called cortisol. Most people hear of cortisol being like what causes adipose tissue around the tummy. You know, it's like high stress leads to, you know, a bigger tummy and fat and stuff like that. So that is true, because once you kick a lot of cortisol out into the system, it shunts all of the other hormones and it kind of becomes the lead head dog. Cortisol then starts down this horrible pathway, like I say, of shutting down those other hormones. So if a young kid, we're all born with these hormones, we just don't get cortisol as adults whenever we're stressed out. But these young kids have cortisol within their system too. And if it just keeps pumping it out, it's going to affect those hormones. And like I mentioned before, if little Sally at the age of 7 is struggling with anxiety, self-esteem issues, and it keeps continuing, now she's into her teenage years, she might have more painful menstrual periods, she might have heavier menstrual periods, she has way more mood swings during those periods, and it's just something that like, and then they're put on birth control to help that. So let's throw in another fake hormone to come in and mess with the good ones that are supposed to be happening. But then ever since Sally's had menstrual issues at 7, you know, from her teen years up to now she's 27, like we talked about, here's Sally that's had so much cortisol being pumped into her system. The hormones that she needs now to make a baby and to get pregnant are so depleted and shut down because of the stress and the cortisol that's been in there, that she's having fertility issues. I hope this is kind of like making sense and like putting some links together for some of you, and like understanding the vastness and the importance of looking at this anxiety and stress within our kids. It's not only causing mental manifestations, it's causing physical issues as well, and how our body actually functions. So like the nervous system controls the immune system, controls that endocrine hormonal system. And so if it isn't talking to each other as it should, we're just gonna start to get a whole host of issues later on down the road. And like, I wanna help prevent that so much, because these kids deserve it as kids, most importantly, and as young adults whenever they get there. And so like anxiety, to kind of wrap up a lot of that, I guess we have one more fifth one, but anxiety is just primarily a very, very stressed nervous system. It's kicked on anxious, it's pumping out the wrong hormones, it's making everything race, it's making everything go, 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 and in that sympathetic, stressed out fight or flight mode. And for kids, they're gonna stay in there because they literally present everything as a threat. And for that to be calmed back down, we need to kick in that parasympathetic nervous system that is rest, relax, digest, grow, immune support, hormonal balances, all of that. Because if we are stressed in that mode, our body's saying, haha, you want me to do what? But we're worried over here about this major threat, and a threat can be different to any kid. But if it's over here worrying about a threat, and our subconscious mind and everything like that is focused on that, it has no time for them to regulate hormones, to digest food properly, to allow our body to heal, to allow our immune system to kick in as it should, and fight illnesses, fight infections that it should be able to do, because it has the energy to do that, because the parasympathetic mode has been kicked on in that child. So that's how we'll talk about with like chiropractic and how that factors in here just in a little bit. And then the sequence of how low self-esteem and confidence starts to factor in. You start to get social awareness lacking. Kids like to live in their own bubble. If they're stressed and they're anxious, they're gonna lack those social awareness, you know, things, and like to want to be part of social interactions. And now they're living in their own bubble, and like social isolation in those young years is so detrimental to like mental health, that we need to kind of get rid of that, so like they do develop good self-esteem and good confidence. They're able to interact with people, interact with adults, because if they're not adapting to those scenarios at their age range, it's just going to become harder and harder for them as they keep getting older. With this being said too, on self-esteem and confidence, they don't want to get involved in anything. They don't want to get involved in extracurricular activities. They say no, they sit at home, they play their video games, they don't go out and play with kids, you know, like on the weekends and stuff like that. So they just don't like to get involved. That's another sign too with kiddos, you know, expressing like anxiety and probably some depression too, because those two kind of go hand in hand. They express like disappointment a lot and doubt within themselves, which is so heartbreaking to see, because I think any kid has the potential to do and be whatever they want. So with anxiety, therefore leads to lack of self-esteem and lack of confidence. They're going to doubt themselves on almost all the things that they do, and leading on into adults when they're wanting to get the job they want, or they're wanting to get the spouse they want, or anything like that, they're going to have issues with that. And I don't want that for any kid. What I do want for kids is like for them just to be kids again. I want them to experience life in a way without worry. They're gonna have their worries, but if we can help take it back and bring their nervous system and get it back in check so they're able to better adapt to those stresses and worries, that's how it should be. Okay, so now we're gonna be moving on to the tips. 5 tips we can help, because it seems like this has just been this huge, like, oh my God, like, how are we ever gonna get through this? What are we gonna do? How do we help? Now you're anxious and stressed, and I didn't mean to do that, but now we're gonna get into the helpful part. So the first tip is to balance that fight or flight response, that stress mode, back into relaxation mode. You're all thinking, well, how in the hell do we do that? Chiropractic. I'm a chiropractor, and like, obviously, and we understand the nervous system so well and how it integrates all together. And within chiropractic, we have that fight or flight mode. So we have the stress response, which happens from about the second cervical vertebrae down to L5, and we could talk about that in a whole different day. But the very, very top 2 bones in our spine and our sacrum is where a lot of that parasympathetic nervous system resides. So how, okay, you're like, well, then how do you find it? Like, blah, 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 blah. Well, we have a scanning system within our chiropractic office that shows us what kind of response your body is in. Is it in stress mode or is it in rest mode? And so it'll let us know that and the areas that are affected. So a lot of kiddos that are stressed out, young babies even, they're gonna be showing like higher scoring in like parts of those nervous systems where the parasympathetic spine is at, or nervous system is at. So like I said, chiropractic, I'm a huge advocate on what we do is primarily relieve stress from the body. We want to find where that body is stressed out within that spine, because that's just where our nervous system is housed. Let's find it, let's fix it, and let's let it heal. Another tip is creating routine. And like I say, I just talked about rigidness and inflexibility, but that just kind of shows like more so in like, you know, aggression and aggravation and defensiveness and OCD if they're unable to just kind of bend a little bit. But kids crave routine, they really do. It's like, you know, you give them that form of stabilization, so then like they don't have to worry about something that's coming next. We're minimizing the unknown for them, which is great. And then like once they know like this is how the day goes, throw in a thing here or there so they can practice flexibility. But overall, kids do crave like a good schedule, you know, and stability. So then that way it's one less worry on their mind, because once again, worry turns into anxiousness and anxiety. Organized priorities. With this, we're kind of talking about like those type A kiddos. They're just wired that way. We all know type A adults, and what do we think? Like type B, like they're chilling, they're good, like, oh hey, don't you have a deadline tomorrow? Yeah, you know, but I got all night. And then you have the type A person that like, I have a deadline in 4 weeks, I gotta start today. So like with your type A kiddos, like they are just, you know, organize their priorities, help them, like look at their homework, look at like the sports that they're doing. Is there one that they're actually really not enjoying? And let's kind of pull that one out. Or let's do something else that you're liking and like minimize some stuff. We'll get into that as well. Less chaos, tip number 3. So we had 1, balance that fight or flight response. 2, create routine. 3, less chaos. I'm gonna be the first to say it, and y'all can be like, shush, you don't know what you're talking about. But no more jam packing. I see so many friends, and I have literally said, I don't know how you do it. You have one kid that's in 3 different things and another kid that's in 4 different things, and you are literally doing something every stinking night of the week, and it is go, 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 go. It makes you stressed. It makes both mom and dad stressed. There's never downtime. You need to make space for downtime. It allows those kids' mind to slow down, shut off, be quiet, and they're not just jumping from here to there to here to there to here to there. I think it's just kind of gotten a little bit out of hand, and like I say, a bunch of you can bark at me if you want, but if you notice that your family or your kids are kind of acting out and doing things that they shouldn't be, or showing signs of stress and anxiety, depression, you know, frustration, aggression, aggravation, all of that, it's time to maybe slow some things down. If you guys are handling it all okay, keep trudging on. But if there's time, or if you're looking at something that you would want to change within your family, like look to kind of bring in less chaos. And with that being said, parents, we need to live by example. We can't be the ones that are just ding, and expect little miss or little mister to be not. They pick up on that. They pick up on our routine, they pick up on our chaos, they pick up on our anxieties, and that's just going to kind of infiltrate into their little systems. Number 4 is limiting, like I say, that schedule kind of goes into like limiting the chaos. Limit that schedule. Find time just for some downtime. If that means they pick one sport and like one instrument and not like you know, select sports and just letting them do things in the summertime when you might have a little bit more time. Finding that balance for whatever works for your family and just limiting that schedule. And then lastly is movement. With movement, and you're thinking, well, you just want to limit the schedule. Yes, I get that. But with safe and active movement, they can still have a limited schedule and they're just outside jumping rope, or they're playing catch, or they're painting a picture, or they're doing whatever. With movement within our body, we have then part of our nervous system that's like, it's called like proprioception. With proprioception, it is our, oh, how do I want to explain this? It is how our body, well, proprioception is, it allows our body to know where it is in space. So like right now I could shut my eyes and tell you that my left hand is about 2 to 3 inches away from my head, and now my left one's way above my head. You know, that's proprioception. That's knowing where we are in space. And how that is known within our body is we have little receptors like along our entire spine, especially up in our upper cervical spine, that lets us know that. But it needs healthy movement in order to get that firing and those messages to the brain. And so with that movement and proprioception actually causes calmness within the brain, because it lets the brain and the body know that, like, hey, everything's good, everything's okay. As chiropractors, with you know, adjusting the spine and allowing like those receptors to get a movement within itself and to send those vibrational forces into the spine, that lets the brain know, like, okay, good things are happening, good movements happening. If your kid loves yoga, have them do yoga. If they love doing stretches, or they just love going for like a walk or a run, or like walking the dog, that is awesome. It just brings that good, healthy, calming movement within them that their body is actually craving. So with all of that, there's some tips, there's some signs to be looking for. It's my passion to work with children because, like I have mentioned, they deserve the world. They deserve the best. They deserve to have every opportunity presented to them. And with that, they need to be functioning the best that they can. And this is near and dear to my heart with my own anxiety struggles. And now, like, after doing a bunch of this research, looking back on my childhood, had a lovely childhood. But I'm like, there were some things in there that I was like, okay, like maybe if I would have, you know, saw that, or like mom and dad helped me with that, maybe some things as an adult wouldn't be here now. But that's okay. Like, we all need to give ourselves grace. We all need to forgive, and we're doing the best that we absolutely can. But I just wanted to share with you guys, you know, bring light to some of these situations, some things you might see with kids that have anxiety, self-esteem, and confidence issues, and how that's also intertwined. And you, like I say, if there's anything that you need, please don't hesitate to ask me any questions. Send me a message, call me, send an email. If you're wondering, like, how do you know all this? Like I talked about those scans, we have those scans that we can do on children that show us exactly where their nervous system might not be firing as it should. And let's just like bring some hope to these kids, bring some answers to you mom and dads, and, you know, let's start delivering some results, so then like we can just have a great, you know, great trickling effect versus a negative trickling effect for these children. So thank you again for joining me. I appreciate it. And email is sjlwellness@gmail.com. Phone number is 402-432-7702. And like I say, you can just drop me a message straight here on Facebook and I will get it. But if you need anything, I am here for you and your kiddo and your family. Thanks.